Hello and welcome to this edition of Ringside Digest. I'm your host Kirk Day, along with my co-hosts Noah Byrne and Nick Miller. And today we got a few big stats to go over, like some players now in the NHL and involving the future of the NHL. We also have a quote from John Tortorella that could mean the Flyers will be going into a rebuild. We're going to have all that and more on this edition of Ringside Digest. But before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe because we're going to be posting content all throughout the year, all throughout the off-season and everything. It's going to be a good time. So without any further ado, we're going to get to our first topic here, which is the Minnesota Wild have stepped up in Kaprizov's absence. Now, this kind of been a continuing subject since he had that injury against the Winnipeg Jets. And we said before, the team needed to step up in his absence, and they have. Matt Boldy, with his hat-trick yesterday, has, in his last 5 games, 9 points, with 5 goals and 4 assists, and a +6 rating. And that also came with the whole team as well. And from Michael Russo here, in 4 games and 4 minutes and 36 seconds without Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy has 4 goals and 8 points, Marcus Johansson has 2 goals and 7 points, and Joel Eriksson has 1 goal and 5 points. And there was also some overturn calls in there that would have had a higher tally of those. But like we said in the video, the team needed to step up without Kirill Kaprizov there, because as we know, he had most of their points, like by a landslide, on that team. And missing him is a huge part, especially in this point of the season, going into the playoffs. So having that team step up like they have so far, like the names there, and the additions that they got at the trade deadline, it definitely is a good way for Minnesota to feel this going into the playoffs and gaining points still without their star player. And it'll even be better when he comes back, giving them that boost, and hopefully they'll still play the same way they are right now with Kirill Kaprizov on top of that. So it's definitely a big step they had to take, and they have done it so far. So we'll see how it goes for the rest of the season and going into the playoffs without him. And hopefully they can keep up this pace. What do you think, Noah?
Kirill Kaprizov is the identity of the Minnesota Wild. You know, he's, like you said, he's their leader in points by a landslide. And, you know, it's very, very good to see that those guys are stepping up. You know, like you said, Matt Boldy and Marcus Johansson. I said Brian Johansson. You know, and it just makes me wonder if those guys can play the way that they're playing and perform the way that they have. This Wild team could be very dangerous come playoff time. If Kaprizov comes back and he's the player that has been all season, they could do some damage come playoff time.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I think the key to that is avoiding Colorado. But we all knew this was going to happen. Like you said, Kirk, when Kirill Kaprizov went down, we all said this had to happen. Like, if this didn't happen, the Wild would be in a really sticky situation right now. But I got to give a lot of credit to Dean Evason. I think he always gets the best out of his players there in Minnesota. And, I mean, with Matt Boldy, the caliber of player he is, you could have seen this coming. Like, guys are probably looking at him and saying, hey, this is, like, the chance for you to really, truly break out and show, like, okay, now that he's gone, I'm the best player on this team while he's not here, and show what you can do as the leader of a team. And we know that he's got that big payday coming over the summer, and I think he's starting to show us why he got it in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been the whole team, too, especially, not to mention the goalies, Marc-Andre Fleury and Philip Gustafsson. Those two guys have been absolutely incredible. And they're part of the reason that in the last 14 games, I think Minnesota's only had 1 game where they haven't gotten a point, which is absolutely huge in this stage of the season. Like, going into the tail end, you got to get every point you can, just to try to figure out where you are going to be in the standings, who you're going to play in the playoffs. Because now, right in the Central, I think the top 3 teams are 1 or 2 points from flip-flopping between each other. So, like, this is a crucial part of the season for you. You got to get as many points you can, because, as we know, Minnesota and Colorado, it's a big rivalry. I think Minnesota could have a bit of trouble against Colorado, but any other team, I do like the chances. Mm-hmm. And with our second topic here for the news, we have is Connor Bedard's insane stat. Now, I mean, this is, you're probably going to ask yourself, what stat is it? Because, I mean, pretty much everything he puts up is insane. But he had a player of the week this week, and it's 17 points in 4 games, 9 goals and 8 assists. And it's just absolutely incredible. And, like, putting up, that leads to his 70th goal of the season as well, which is another absolutely insane. Like, 70 and 72 for 142 points in 55 games. Like, that's insane. It's nobody's ever going to be like, well, I say that, but it will be probably close now in a couple of years when you get another guy up like him. But he also, in the CHL, like, there's a stat here that, like, very intrigued me that I seen on Twitter. And it was from first overall pick since 2000 and their CHL draft year goal totals, and we would assume Connor Bedard will be a first overall pick. I don't even think it's going to be a question at this point. But he has 4 more than the top, who was Sidney Crosby. And, like, you can see through there, like, Connor McDavid had 44 in his draft year in the CHL. Like, it's gonna be something dangerous, I'd see, with Connor Bedard, wherever he goes. We were talking earlier that we've seen the Columbus Blue Jackets have Patrick Laine at center, for example, playing Gaudreau on the left wing. If they get Laine at center, if they keep him there, if he ends up working, and then Bedard on the other side, like, you can really pair him up with anybody, and it would be something special to see. Yeah. What do you think, Noah?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I mean, this player Connor Bedard is electric. You know, if you just want to throw up that tweet again with all the goal stats there, I mean, look at those names. You know,
yeah,
Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, Stamkos, Tavares, McDavid. They're all superstars in this league, and I have no doubt in my mind that Connor Bedard will be a superstar in the NHL.
Yeah, no, like what you can't really say anything about the kid that hasn't already been said. Like now at some point, like he is above like all those players like Connor McDavid and like Sidney Crosby, whatever. At some point, you got to wait and see what his game translates to in the NHL. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not going to be a perennial superstar because he is going to be a perennial sniper and superstar in the NHL. But it's almost unbelievable to look at that stat, really.
Yeah, it's like 70 goals and 72 assists in like 55 games. Goal per game is insane, let alone goal per game and assists per game, like almost double. Like that's something unheard of.
And the kid is going to be something else.
Yeah, for sure. And with our final topic here, we have the Philadelphia Flyers may be on the verge of a rebuild. Now, this comes from a quote that John Tortorella had in an interview today, and it says, "I think where we're at as an organization, you don't start adding players until you subtract some players, and that'll be in the discussion at the end of the year." And like Danny Briere said when he became GM, that he's not afraid to use the word rebuild. And I've seen some people saying the Flyers probably won't go into rebuild. They're trying to go into a retool. I don't know if that's the right idea. I mean, who do you really have on the Flyers? That you don't have too many prospects. You do have good ones. I'll say that. You do have some good prospects, but you don't have a high quantity of prospects. And I think there are some people that they should probably let walk. I'm going to pull up their contracts here. I know it's a bit hard to see. But guys like Kevin Hayes, Cam Atkinson, I think they should probably be traded. I mean, they're not really going to be integral to a rebuild. I can see, like, Kevin Hayes would be if he wasn't so much money on, like, your contract. And you should let JVR walk in the offseason. And one we've spoken about a nice bit is the possibility of Carter Hart being traded. Because if you're going to a rebuild and you have a young goalie like Carter Hart, he's still not old, but he's not like a rookie goalie or anything. He still has a lot left to do, and you don't want to have him go through a rebuild and like deteriorate his value. If you can still get it like a good return with his value right now at his age, he still has a chance to prove himself. I mean, he hasn't really had much to do since the bubble, and like the playoff bubble, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Philadelphia does in the offseason. I definitely think a rebuild would be a good option for them. I think what they have now, they can get the most value out of before it all starts to sink, because I don't really think they're going to be top contenders anytime soon if they don't make any moves. So I do think John Tortorella had the right idea here. They need to get rid of before they can add. It's going to have to be part of it. They won't be able to add too much if they don't get rid of the big contracts. So it all lines up. What do you think, Noah?
Philly's a really interesting one for me. You know, it was March 3rd when the deadline was, and JVR hadn't been moved, and you know that kind of puzzled me a little bit because, like you said, they're kind of in that position where they don't want to rebuild, but they don't want to burn house. But you know, I think the start of that was firing Chuck Fletcher, their GM. I mean, he signed, like you said, he made that Atkinson deal. He signed Rasmus Ristolainen to an absolutely absurd contract. Signed, I think it's Travis Sanheim for 6.25, if I am correct. You know, I'd much rather see the Flyers kind of take those guys who were on expiring deals and ship them away and kind of get to rebuild, get prospects and picks back, and try to rebuild this team from the outside in. I really don't know what's going on in Philly.
Yeah, I really think they should have torn it down when they started with the subtraction of Giroux last season.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good point.
I really think that was the perfect place to start. Like, okay, this guy is obviously the leader on this team, and you're trading him away. Like, it's the end of an era there in Philadelphia. Get rid of everybody else too. Rebuild back up so you can have another decent era. Like when Giroux was young, the Flyers were really good. When they had actually Danny Briere was on the team when they were really good. So, I mean, I'd like to see Philadelphia succeed here. Like I don't see a world where if they keep the same roster, they don't go into a full rebuild, that they'll be successful in the next decade. But I mean, I agree with what Torts is saying. Like, I mean, you can't bring in anything that's going to help you if you don't push out the things that are hurting you. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how Briere approaches his first offseason as a GM. I think that's going to be tough on him because, one, he's coming into a horrible situation where Chuck Fletcher put that team in the dump. And Ron Hextall and Chuck Fletcher put that team in the dump collectively before he left. But I think that it's going to be really tough on Briere. He's got some help, but, geez, that's a tough situation to come into. And another thing, get Carter Hart out of there now. Immediately.
Yeah. Philadelphia sports fans deserve better. I mean, it's been a tough couple of years for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, like they're getting held down by the big contracts. Like, I mean, JVR this year won't be too much of. I'm assuming they're not going to re-sign him, if they do, shouldn't be for as much as it was. And like Kevin Hayes, that is a lot of money. That's too much money. He's good. Not $7 million good, but he's good. So, like, if they can move him somewhere, I mean, it'd be tough to retain on him, too, because he still has some term left. But if you can get him somewhere, if someone's willing to take him, I mean, I'd pull the trigger on it. You almost have to at this point. If you want to start your rebuild, I think that's where you have to start. Get the big ones out of the way.
One thing I do want to touch on with that Giroux thing, the Giroux trade, I should say. Look at the guy that got Owen Tippett. He was kind of he was a top prospect over there in Florida, and he kind of wasn't doing the best. He kind of needed a little bit of a change of scenery, and he's having a stellar year over there in Philly. Playing first line, I think he's probably playing power play 1, and he's going to be a 25 goal scorer. So why don't you ship off everybody you have and try and get guys like that, young guys who can put the puck in the back of the net, who you can build your core around?
Yeah, I agree. Like I think just follow suit on what they did with Claude Giroux, but that being said, I do think it's really hard to do that once you've tied yourself down with those long-term contracts with big money on them. Like Rasmus Ristolainen, he's there until 2027, making over $5 million. That's a huge problem. Rasmus Ristolainen being there until 2027 is a problem. Never mind making above minimum wage. It's just bad.
Yeah, it's something got to be worked on, for sure.
Yeah.
That's all we have for this video. And if you liked it, make sure to subscribe, because we're going to be posting a whole bunch of content like this. Especially, it's going to be getting a lot better coming in the playoffs, free agency, and everything, the draft. It's going to be good. So make sure to make sure to subscribe. Like I said at the start of the video, it's going to be fun. And that's all we have for this video. Thank you for watching.